Look Up TV.
A very warm welcome to Bottom Line Kenya. In 2011, Kenya passed a law that prohibits female genital mutilation, and very heavy penalties have been put for the perpetrators and, of course, those abetting the practice. And about 10 years later, we are having the conversation because we have failed to eradicate female genital mutilation in the country. With me on set today is Susan Nyabena. Karibu sana. You are a gender advocate.
Yes.
And we want to have this conversation about female genital mutilation.
Yes.
It has been there for a long time. When we look at it, our ancestors, our grandmothers, and even people before them, it was a common practice in the African setting. But we know now that it is being phased out, given that for health reasons and otherwise. So what is your thoughts on the progress so far?
I would say progress had been done. I think after the act was passed into law, I think that there was progress, and we could see there was a particular lady who came up and said, okay, if you cannot done to a child because you know they're below the age of 18, so maybe when they get to 18, they're adults, they can make their own choices. So which means they can still be able to, you know, practice FGM. So there was a little bit of controversies in there. But what people don't realize is that policy is one thing, the reality on the ground is one. Yes, we have managed to make good progress on phasing out the traditional aspect of it, like being done by, like you're saying, our old, you know, grandmothers or our elders, so to say. But we have not, or we did not put into consideration that actually people are medicalizing. Is it medicalizing? Yes. The medicalizing of FGM. So now we have a new set of problem with technology backing it up, because now people are going to the hospitals and nurses and midwives are doing the FGM. So we've moved, the one that is happening now, it claims that it is less harmful, less painful.
Since it is being done by medical practitioners.
Yes, so to say, but the effects are still the same. Whether it is done, you know, at the village with all the, you know, unhygienic environment and things like that, or whether it's done at the hospital with actually a medical practitioner, the impact is still the same. But I think we did not put that into consideration when coming up with the laws. Yes. Okay.
And now that is one worrying trend, because if these are the medical practitioners themselves, they are informed about that could be involved in the female genital mutilation, and they still go ahead and do it. So if they then are the professionals, then this puts us in a very bad place.
Yes, it does. It does. So yeah, like I'd mentioned before, you see, the issue is being informed is one aspect of the situation. Now, getting to change your mindset, so to say, is another. Let's say I come from a community that heavily practices FGM. I surely do. Okay, so it is one thing, like I've gone through school, I've got to know that FGM is still, you know, it's a harmful practice and everything like that. But when I grow up, you find that I will still have children and make them go through the whole process. The lady who kept on insisting that FGM, you know, should still be allowed for people who are above 18 years, she's a learned individual. It's not like she, you know, she's illiterate. She's an elite person. People we find in boardrooms, people are actually making our policies. So it is one, I think it's more of changing the mindset, the narrative, the cultural perception of what we actually deem as fit or good for us, and what is really, really good for you know, I would say the victims. Yes.
So culture then comes into place, because, you know, culture can even be above spirituality to some people.
Yes.
Culture can be above education. So then how do we approach it? Because if we have professionals, people who've gone to school, then they have been taken through the whole process. They understand that the health implications that circumcision on girls could have. So then what sort of conversation should we be having?
Okay, like I'm saying, it's more of changing the narrative. So I really appreciate that organizations that are coming up. I would mention on the organization that Tony is having, and he's bringing men into the conversation. And when he was having, if you've watched his videos, the men actually do not even realize what the whole process or the actual act that happens when FGM comes about. But when we are out here, we tend to presume that FGM do happen because, you know, of patriarchy, which it is, but not entirely. There's a big proportion that women ourselves, we fuel it. When you go to the traditional aspect, the ones who are doing the act are females. The one who do the whole process, you know, it's like you get prepared like a bride, you know, like the way we do makeup for a bride, they tend to get prepared, the girls.
Process.
Yes, it's women. The men are just there to, you know, attend, eat, and feel like, okay, we have another woman, or maybe there's a bride upcoming. Because usually in a traditional aspect, when you undergo FGM, you're definitely next to getting married. So that is how it goes. Changing the whole conversation, let people realize that we grew up and found culture existing, like ancestors and sisters and everything. It is different. Education is something that keeps on changing. We can actually say, oh, I don't know, in 1990, whatever, this education was there. But when it comes to culture, you can barely say, you can never quote, like, when did it start? You know, so... True. We come, we find it there. You cannot. Exactly. We come, we find it there. No one is questioning it. No one wants to be seen as an outcast. You don't want to look like it's like umepotea or something. Yeah. So you go with the flow. But for education, we tend to see, okay, in 1990, whatever, or 18, whatever, or 14 BC and everything, and we tend to question and find the gaps, and, you know, so that is where the difference is. Yes.
So, and on Saturday, the 6th of February,
yes,
we marked the day against, you know, the abuse. So the FGM against the girl child. It was marked in Alale, West Pokot. And so it was just seeking to see the progress that we have made so far. And according to a UNICEF report, we have over 4 million girls who have been circumcised in the country. And the efforts are being done by different groups, and even so, Rachel Shebesh, the CAS for Gender, talking about the different challenges in trying to, you know, stop FGM. So what are the challenges that are there right now?
Like I said, I think we've shifted. We've completely shifted from the traditional aspect, and we are trying to pick up on the technology issue, like modernizing it. Because, you know, after the government came and it was really stringent on it, you could see that they had like whistleblowers, so to say. And if, you know, they could watch the elder ladies who used to do it, or, you know, during the times, like they know this particular time of the year, they're having, you know, the high rise of FGM happening. So they would tend to put people like community watchers, and they will report. So the ones in the traditional aspect went a little bit down, that for sure. But now when we modernize it, when I'm going to the hospital, you're not going to ask like, you know, confidentiality and everything. You're not going to ask me what I'm going to do in hospital. What did I discuss with the nurse? What did the nurse do to me? It's confidential. And most of them have like, they have clinics that do that. Like when you come, there is a way you ask for it. So as much as I know there is there's the patriarchy bit, the social cultural aspect, you know, the gender norms that come with it on the traditional aspect, but we are really missing out on the modern woman, so to say, because that is now where it's happening. We've left the village, we left all of our things. Now we are playing right here where the policies are made, you know, where the institutions that actually, we are just right under their noses. Yes,
it is happening.
It is happening.
And people have said they have neighbors. Neighbors, you know, you've lived for such a long time, but then there's this particular time, then they take their girls somewhere for a while, so they undergo the cut,
yes,
and then they come back.
Yes.
So it is actually something that is happening even in towns.
It does. You wouldn't really know, you know, you might tend to, with our society right now, and I don't know, in Nairobi, so to say, we don't really bother so much about neighbors, because when you start to, you tend to be labeled. It's like you're so much into other people's business. So if I see you today and tomorrow I don't see you, it it wouldn't really bother me much. When you come, I'll be like, okay, you're back, and that's it. So it makes it easier for such activities or acts to happen, because nobody is really paying attention to the neighbor. We've normalized that you stay in your own lane, yeah.
So then we would not know.
You will not know.
Yeah. And even as you talk about it, there was a report last week about women married women who are going them voluntarily, deciding to go and get the cut.
So
what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts in the same?
I think I would say it's more of a sense of belonging. My opinion, it's like a sense of belonging. The way FGM has been taught, it is like when you undergo FGM, you belong to a particular community. You feel complete, because the perception around FGM is that women, you're not supposed to be sexually active. You're not supposed to enjoy the issues with regards to. Actually, you're not supposed to appreciate your issue, the whole package of your sexuality. So when you undergo FGM, actually they call it, okay, it's the mutilation, but it changed. Policies call it cut right now, because basically mutilation is like scattering everything. So they cut it because they're being precise on what they're looking for. So they say when you undergo the cut, your sexual desires are reduced, so you're tamed, because if you're not tamed, hence you will be running up and about, and you'll be more like like a prostitute. So for us to avoid a good, national woman to be a prostitute, we have to tame you. So hence we do the cut. So your sexual desires will go down, and you're able to stay faithful to one man. So the way it was built up, as a woman, we've been meant to believe that we cannot be able to contain sexual desires. So unless you undergo the cut, probability of you running around when you're in marriage or when you grow older are high. And basically, men would not want to marry you because you are not cut. So hence, you might not actually stay home as a good wife or fit in that box that we term who a good wife should be. So most people tend to, it's like a sense of belonging now, I'm whole, I'm complete. They're unwanted, because they say like, there's a notion that says when you've not undergone the cut, it's like you have a male reproductive part with you. So we need to get off the male reproductive part and remain the beautiful woman that you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yes.
And in Korea, that was in September of 2020, they paraded a number of girls who had undergone the cut.
Yes.
And they were being rewarded with different gifts, including money. So that is happening at this time and age in public, awarding girls who have undergone female genital mutilation.
It's, like I said, it's a form of... it's like, you've moved from one stage, let's say childhood, to kind of adulthood, so to say. So you feel like a complete woman, like we tend to say, let's say on education, at least you should have a Form 4 certificate, at least, so to say, so the society can deem you elite, So when you finish Form 4, there is a sense of pride, or calm, or I don't know how to put it, that you tend to feel, and then you feel like you can make your own decision, because now you've gone to school, you know what decisions entail, so you can choose to even go to campus or not. It's your choice. So it is the same thing. So those who have actually undergone, they're the real women. They're the complete women. They're the ones that society look up to. When we are making, having these communities or the chamas or what particular leadership position, they are the women who go to, because they now fit that narrative, or it's a box of who a good woman should be, or rather a good wife should be. Yes.
Okay. And now there was a conversation that was raised, I think that was in 2017, about women in the prone areas. We know that circumcision for girls is prominent in 22 counties in this country. And one of the communities, there were stories that different political leaders are afraid to speak about this issue for fear of being unpopular. So then it becomes a political issue, because if you are a person, an influential person in authority, and you do not have a say, you do not have an opinion on that which is very detrimental, then the community is in problems.
Yes, it is in problem. And I would say let us blame it on ourselves, like the citizen, when we do voting. When I'm an influential person or a political individual, it does not necessarily mean I would go with a particular narrative. You might find that deep down I'm actually supporting FGM, but I cannot say it out because I'll be called out by maybe international organization or the government. Just like the way I say, when we talk about 50-50 in gender equality, it does not necessarily mean when you have more women in a particular segment, it necessarily, you know, brings about the gender equality, or you know, marginalization of women will go down. There are women who actually praise, they thrive in patriarchal settings. They do up, even when they see you as a woman coming up, they'll be like, why are you trying to fight the men? It is the same thing. So being influential or being in a political position does not necessarily mean I'm going to fight for it. I might have my own agenda. I would say what you want to hear at that particular time because I need to get in there. But when I have my own, you know. And especially for the women who have actually undergone the cut, it is going to be very difficult if they've not been able to realize the impacts of FGM. It is going to be very difficult for you to have her say it contrary, because we'll be looking at you and you'll say, you know, you have actually undergone the cut. So you're trying to mislead our girls not to undergo, but you did. But you see, times have changed. When you might find like the particular individual was undergoing the cut, it was, you know, some years back. People were not even aware, we had not been sensitized. So changing the narrative now, people in the rural area, the traditional aspect, do not see it that way. They tend to see like you're trying to mislead their girls so that can be running around.
True.
Yes.
So then you don't believe that politicians, especially female politicians, that they have a voice in this, because they will change the conversation.
They do have a voice. They do. It's their responsibility, especially on these women reps, women representative. It is your responsibility to pick up every particular women issues that happen in that particular county, because they are different. They are, you know, every county has, women are not monogamous. There are particular issues that relate maybe to the women in Nairobi, okay, that are different, that will maybe relate to women in Kirinyaga or women in Mombasa. Let me use Nairobi and Mombasa. Mombasa really thrives on patriarchy, and I remember there's one time their women rep was encouraging women to appreciate polygamy. So even if you're the third wife, you're the fourth wife, you should be happy. It's like at least a man likes you, you know, or you get to be called Mrs. whatever, you know. Now when you come to Nairobi, it is going to be difficult to tell a woman that she can be, I don't know, number 4 or number whatever. Actually, women have reached a point, they're like, they're working for themselves. If the man comes, we swing, we flow along. If he doesn't come, then you get to enjoy life.
To complement,
yes,
not complete.
Yes. So you see, let's consider these two kind of women. It is the same thing. So when you find when you expect that, okay, I'm a political leader, I'm going to make the change, it's I'd say it's a little bit misguided. It will reach a point, I have my own agenda, you know. The women reps, it is their responsibilities for sure, but let us be honest, how many have actually picked it? We are always just distributing pads. We will finish to distribute sanitary towels, we wait again, we are distributing sanitary towels. How many talk about the GBV issues? In Nairobi, how many GBV issues have we had just only January? Valentine is coming. We are going to see, sorry to say, a lot of these GBV issues. I don't know who left. Do we talk about it? We don't know, because we often to believe that women issues are only meant for the people in the rural or particular segment, which is not the case. So having women in this political position or having those women reposition, it does help, but it not necessarily means that if a woman is there, she would push to eradicate FGM. Okay. Yes.
And one of the challenges that was also mentioned at West Pokot when we were marking the Day Against FGM was that now that different communities are aware that they're going to be penalized for, you know, undergoing, doing the practice. So then they are crossing borders. Some are crossing to Uganda, others are crossing to Ethiopia. To make sure that the girls still undergo the cut.
Yes.
Yeah. So what can be done to curb that?
This I would now, let's say, put responsibility to the government and the community themselves. If the community have really been sensitized, okay, they would tend to, okay, you know, the sensitization bit, there's usually a gap. I'll come and tell you, stop to do this. You know, but okay, this is what I've known all my life. So if I'm stopping to do it, then what? Like, it's like you're left blank. So we recommend on alternatives. So if I'm telling you to stop FGM, during that process of FGM, you know, the way they train you how to be a good woman, a good wife, how you should serve your husband, and all of those things. Now, I'll give you alternative, information package that fits that particular age, or the number of girls, you know, their bracket age, that will fill. We can talk about, I don't know, skills development, you know, those who are maybe into baking, making of mats and all of those things. So you shift their attention, that they do not feel that during this particular time that they were supposed to be learning something, it is being wasted. So, and in that process, I encourage people to actually pick up on the comprehensive sexual education, because it's part of it. Let the girls know that when they do not undergo the cut, it does not mean that they're incomplete, or I don't know, something is wrong with them. Okay. And you are able, it's a decision. The whole package on sexuality, it is your decision, it is your body, so you get to decide. So we sensitize, but we don't talk, our society, we don't want to talk about, you know, anything to do with the sexuality part of it. So we'll go there, we'll sensitize and say, stop FGM, FGM is not good, FGM is not good. When we are done, the community doesn't feel anything. It's like you've been singing the same song over and over again. Sure. And the more you tell them to stop, the more they feel like, okay, it must be maybe we are doing something good. That is why they want us to stop. They always believe that somebody from outside is against them. So it pushes them more. It's encouraging them in a way, yes.
So then we'd have to change what we've always been doing.
Yes.
We have not managed to eradicate it.
We need a change.
So then the conversation needs to be different.
Very different.
And we'll be talking more about that. But first, we are taking a short break here on Bottom Line Kenya, but we'll be back with more on FGM. Don't go too far.
You're watching Look Up TV. On the next episode of Kenyan Gospel Hits. Kenyan Gospel Hits, Mondays from 11 p.m. only on Look Up TV.
Kibera Slum. It's different and the biggest of its kind in Africa. With people drawn from different backgrounds, all united in their quest to beat the odds and change their lives. Amid a grinding poverty and neglect, theirs is a life driven by hope for survival, engineered by 3 Ps: patience, passion, and perseverance. Join us on Look Up TV as we shine a light on Kibera's untold stories.
On the next episode of Health Journal.
The human body moves in 3 planes of motion. These planes of motion are, one is flexion. Yeah. So at the Human Garage, we provide
Health Journal, Mondays from 8:30 p.m. only on Look Up TV.
Turn your 50 bob into $1 million shilling investment. Changamka and Shindagari Chap Chap with Hometel. There's millions in shillings worth of prizes to be won. Send your 50 bob to paybill number 4040153 and get a chance to win 20,000 shillings daily. And each week, one person gets a chance to walk away with a Mazda Demio and another a Beth Mobility motorbike. Remember, the more times you try, you could be the winner of a fantastic Toyota Prado. Do not be left out. Send 50 shillings to paybill number 4040153, account name Look Up TV, and get yourself a Hometel lucky number. Changamka and Shindagari Chap Chap with Hometel promotion. For more information, visit www.shindagari.co.ke. Terms and conditions apply.
You're watching Look Up TV.
Welcome back. You are watching Bottom Line Kenya right here on Look Up TV. And remember, you can engage with us. The SMS number is 20374. And you can also talk to us on social media, on Facebook at Look Up TV and at Twitter at Look Up TV. Today in the program, we are talking about campaign against female genital mutilation. The day was marked on 6th of February, that was Saturday, and we are here 10 years later after the law was passed to end FGM. And with me here on set, Susan Nyabena, who is a gender advocate. And the government is seeking to end female genital mutilation by 2022. So we have made progress. It is evident ever since the passing of the law in 2011, sorry. So it has greatly reduced, but we know that it's still being practiced. So how practical is that going to be?
Actually, the practice of FGM has increased. The rates have increased. It reduced when the law was passed, just a little bit, and then now when we find a way around it, it has increased tremendously, especially during this COVID-19 period, and you know, girls were at home, easily accessible. So it it has really increased. Finding a way around it, like I said, you know,
So
right
we're
now,
getting like loopholes.
yes, and I think the conversation we are having was the way FGM is defined on international, like international instruments and structures, and even national policies, and now FGM being medicalized, they found a way to go around the definition. So what they are doing is not exactly illegal. You can play on the lines of consent, like did the girls consent, but then again you can say the parents, you know, when you're a child, the parent can consent on your behalf. So if the parent consented, so it has become way too complicated, and it's difficult to actually pinpoint, you know, now the perpetrators or the people who are fueling FGM. So I think it's something that we need to reconsider. The policies are good. I would say the policies are good, but we need to now reconsider that times are changing. We are picking up on technology, you know, things are done differently. I don't necessarily have to even go to the hospital. We know a particular nurse or somebody who does it. We just call them at home, and it happens
They just
at
come
my
over
home.
and
Yes, so we are finding different ways to fulfill this particular the act. Yes.
And now that you mentioned the COVID-19 period, then there was so much time that was spent at home. So girls in marginalized communities where FGM cases are highest, then they were home. So did the campaigns stop, or were they not as active? Because we saw very many girls falling victim. Some were even circumcised at night, just when after the patrol has been done, they now they take advantage of that opportunity.
I wouldn't say the campaign stopped. The campaigns have been ongoing, really. Now the issue is what? People shifted the attention to just COVID issues, like how many deaths, how many recovery, how many these days, when, you know, any new regulations that has come up, when is the president going to, you know, ease the lockup down thing. We completely forgot about secondary impacts of COVID. So we are all focusing on the death aspect, who recovered, you know, what to look at. Now it gave a big window, or rather the greatest opportunity these people could use, you know. So the practice just kept on happening, you know, and it's like we are conversing, okay, if you cannot come to the village, somebody is there, they can do, I know somebody who knows somebody, and the practice kept on happening. So like we're saying, apart from that, from the village aspect, like after the patrol is done, they would do it in the middle of the night. In the urban area, like I've said, they will still walk to hospital and have it done. We all think that you have a mask, maybe you're going to get checked for COVID, or you have other diseases, you know, but I'm going to have the FGM happening. So it did increase for sure,
Okay, and now that we're here, you know, the pandemic is still here, but now since things have eased up a bit, the economy is sort of getting to its feet again, then now the campaigns, what way should we run them?
The campaigns, first I would say, let us have everybody coming in, especially the men, because we tend to always put it on the men, Look at it right now, during COVID period. Where were the men to go to the villages and implement this? It is us, the women, who are, okay, my daughter is growing old, she hasn't undergone it, time is running out, and we keep on pushing. It is us, the women. So having men coming into the conversation, especially on women who thrive in patriarchal settings, when the man decides, the woman is not going to do it. So sensitizing the men that actually FGM has an impact, making them aware what their daughters are actually going through, what the wife is doing, or the auntie, the sister, whatever is doing to their little girl. When they realize it, they're able to say no. When a man says no to a woman who thrives in this setting, it's not going to happen, because he will be very strict. He will be watching. Yes, when he says it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen. That is specifically for women, for women who thrive in patriarchal settings. Now, for those women who we tend to say we are against it, but then we find loopholes or ways in which we can come around, and say that this is actually part of us. It's our culture. We don't want to lose our identity and things like that. People need to be sensitized, and we change it from basically telling, stop this, like FGM is not good for you because of 1, 2, 3. FGM, we need to change the mindset. Okay, why are you practicing FGM in the first place? Like, what are the benefits to you? So when you get to understand where they're coming from, then you are able to either tell and make or shift the conversation or the particular, the mindset of the individual. But when I come on preaching to you, it can be like, okay, you're telling me that it has, negative impact, people bleed to death. They'll be like, I didn't bleed to death.
So then we need to talk about, to break it down.
Yes.
And understand where it's actually the roots.
Yes, what is fueling it? Yes, what exactly are they, getting out of it? What is the level of satisfaction they have? And then we bring in an alternative. Yes.
Okay, and about the policies, and of course the penalties that are imposed on perpetrators and those who are abetting the practice. Is it that the penalty is not heavy enough? Because why do we still have all these rampant cases still happening?
Yes, one, I would say the penalty is not heavy enough, because you're basically changing the structure of this particular girl, the sexual and reproductive health part. That is one. Two, we don't get to see most of it happening because either most of them are not being reported. We actually don't know that they are happening. If it happens in my house, I'm not going to tell you that my daughter underwent this. And usually when these activities or acts happen, you're not supposed to talk about it. Like, it goes with you to the grave. Only the people who helped in the process get to know. You as an individual, you're sworn to secrecy. So are the people who participate. So nobody gets to know that it ever happened. So I think there is that aspect of the penalties are not heavy enough, but then again, we don't have enough whistleblowers, so to say, or people reporting these particular activities, or people just coming up front and say, this thing is happening, or my neighbor did this, or my community are planning this. Yes.
And if people know, now they're joking about whistleblowers, if I know that my neighbors did that to their girls, then I should feel responsible to go and report the same, because now this becomes a whole issue for the society, not just an individual. Then so what is the responsibility for everyone in the community?
It's a tricky one. It's a tricky one. In the modern aspect, like I would say, people tend to say you stick to you mind your own business. So let's say even if I see something is happening and then I go to report, even sometimes at the police office, they're like, they're the parents, they get to decide. And if you manage maybe to get it to court, it's a long legal process, because now, okay, the case might be taken like it's the state versus the parents or something. But when you're going through whatever, and then the girl is like, she actually wanted it as much as she could not consent to it, like we don't believe they can consent, and the parents believe that it is good for them, it brings a whole lot of issues. So it's going to be a drag, and some court cases, people tend to think, like they're a waste of time, they're a waste of money. So the dragging actually just makes you get bored. Now, in the traditional aspect, I can say that there's been a change. That one for sure. Things are happening. People are whistleblowing. We get to know. You find that before the the due date or whatever, when they're planning, somebody has already tipped off either the police officers or they have departments at the police that they will check in on the organizations within the community,
especially those
yes
high prevalent areas.
Yes, at the village, the change is there. That one for sure. Yes.
And one of the things that was mentioned on Saturday in the conference, in the campaign, is that the involvement of local leaders. So how effective is it when you involve the local chief and the elder of the village?
And the traditional aspect, if you don't involve them, it cannot happen. They are the gatekeepers. They are the ones who get to decide. It's like it's their own country, so to say. It is my community. I get to decide. So if you come from wherever you're coming and you want to implement a particular activity and have not given an okay with it, no one will participate. Sometimes you set up a training and they will not show up because the village elder said no. They trust in him. He's the one who guides them. He's the one who makes, the rules and regulation on the ground. So they have to be involved. You have to start with them before you actually reach the ground.
Because then they are the ones who know how.
Yes, they make the decisions.
At what time? They know at night. They know the ground.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And even still in the villages, one of the things that was also an alternative way for FGM, so that then in the communities people don't have to undergo the cut, then they can do, say, similar an alternative procedure, alternative whatever process, so as not to practice FGM, but say maybe teach girls how to do things in a certain way. So alternatives to FGM. What are your thoughts on that?
I believe they would work, and I actually encourage that, not necessarily to FGM, but all the harmful traditional practices. It is good to have an alternative. Now, I cannot say that we would have one alternative that fits all, because then again, women are not monogamous. The communities are not monogamous. There are particular things you find in this community that are different in the other. So I would say find alternatives for these particular communities, tailor make them. Tend to understand that, okay, maybe if they thrive in a particular, I don't know, they have particular traditions that are good. There are actually traditional practices that are good. Tailor make your policies or your training packages.
And make emphasis
yes, on
that
those
area.
good ones, and let them thrive. If let's say they were celebrating a particular, like in my community, we tend to celebrate maybe the first child of, we do like a party, like an overnight party, and we say we are celebrating that the husband and the wife are fertile. Encourage those kind of practices, because it might look like it's not really sensible to celebrate it, but they thrive in it. And this one, everybody is at the table, both men and women. It's joyful. The family of the husband and the wife, they meet, they exchange gifts. So you encourage on such practices, and they should let go on this.
So then they would still feel like they belong.
Yes.
With a practice that is still positive and beneficial.
Yes, and it's not like you're taking everything away from them, because they identify to this culture. So you're not robbing them, but you're showing them that actually they are good ones. And then, like you're saying, you can teach them on other things, the skills development, and like right now we are trying to say that not everybody thrives, and not everybody is meant to be an academia in the academia field. So we find other alternatives on what they can.
There are different strengths.
Yes.
Okay, and even as we conclude the conversation around men, you had briefly mentioned about how we should involve men, because I'm going to have a conversation with a guy called Kipanoi, who's going to give us a male perspective. So just very briefly, talk about the involvement of men in this conversation.
Men are key, either them being as perpetrators or being also victims, and I would say policy change makers, like the agents of change. Being perpetrators, definitely the ones fueling it, the ones insisting like, I have a daughter, she has to undergo FGM and things like that. Now when it comes to change making, like I said, the particular videos I've seen of this changing of narrative, some men do not know actually what happened. So when they were shown the actual act, like how the girls are held down and how the thing is done, they were surprised. They could not finish watching the video. Some of them walked out. People were traumatized. Now when they realized that since that day, they've been walking around the community, and it's like they keep on checking on the girls, like you should not vanish, you should not go anywhere. It's now embedded in their minds.
It hits different.
Yes.
Now that they've seen what
Yes.
it does, how detrimental it is, even just physically.
Yes, because you can imagine, you can see, it's painful. You can see how it's happening and things like that. So when they say no, the women don't have a choice, because if you're not listening to your husband, then how are you expecting to stay in the community?
Okay.
So on a patriarchal basis, that is. So having them coming in, and very, very key to policy, and policy making. When we leave them out, we tend to have the policies become gender blind, because it's more of just a women perspective, and we don't have anything coming from the men. Yes.
Okay, and thank you so much. So we will be looking at what Jeremiah Kipano is saying, who is an activist, who will be giving us a male perspective on the issue of FGM. Female genital mutilation is obviously a conversation that circulates around women for obvious reasons, because the act is done on women. But there are men who are ardent campaigners against female genital mutilation. And one of such men today is with me on set, Jeremiah Kipano, who is an activist. So you're obviously not a woman. So why is it important for you to have this conversation?
I was born and raised in Kajiado, Kenya. Obviously, the Maasai is the top 4 communities practicing FGM in Kenya, just at 78% on KDHS 2014. And when we look at the community and how its structures look like, it is definitely prevalent among different facets of where they live, from Laikipia to Kajiado to Narok. And so I grew up in a place where such conversations were normal. We are going to our party to celebrate, the cutting of girls. And so over time you come and realize that this is actually harmful.
So it is something that you used to see growing up, because then you had people probably in your neighborhood.
Initially for us, we just went there because there was food, so we always just went to celebrate, but I never really thought about it in terms of it being a harmful traditional practice. Everyone used to do it, so you just go and celebrate and go back home in the evening without really thinking about what the girls are going through when you guys are celebrating.
So, and you ran a campaign, Men and FGM.
I'm part of the campaign. Men and FGM is a movement all over Africa, globally now. And its main aim is rallying men and boys to helping or just joining girls in ending FGM, because by the end of the day, if the father wants the girls to be cut, the mother probably would not have a say in most of these patriarchal communities. So I think it's really crucial to have men and boys in the conversation, because it's the men who demand that this girl be cut before they marry. Also, it's the father who wants this girl to be cut so that they can, be able to present her to the other men and get dowry, or vice versa. And also, it's them who can really change the conversation in their household, and they have the ability of stopping this generational tradition if they say, this is not happening in my family. So and
really especially important, because now men are the head of the family, and in these specific communities, say the Maasai community and the Samburu community, where these cases are very prevalent, then the man has a very big say in running the family affairs. So his voice is then very important.
Yes, it is. And most of the communities actually are really, if not all in Kenya, are highly patriarchal. And so look at, the Somali, who are over 90% in the practice of FGM. Look at the Kisii people who top medicalization in Kenya. Look at the Samburu as well. Look at the Maasai, All these communities are highly patriarchal. Though the men usually say, I'm not involved in the campaign, I'm not involved in the practice, this is a women's affair. But by the end of the day, if men say, I'm not going to marry a girl that's cut, then the girl will not be cut. And so by the end of the day, yes, we all have a responsibility, we all have a role to play.
And now, what is the campaign doing to demystify the myths? We know that for a long time, women are told, then if you undergo the cut, then it will be better for the men, even in terms of intimacy. So what conversation are you having around it?
I think the End FGM campaign in general really has to be community specific, because there are different myths according to different communities. Some believe that they'll be cast if they don't cut. Some believe that the children will die when they come in touch with the clitoris. Some communities believe that when a girl is not cut, then they're going to be dirty and smelly, and it's all about what people think is true. And so all communities have different approaches. But on myths, if people, for example, are saying you're going to be cast, you definitely would find one or two people in these communities who have not been cut and they're doing well. And so I think with time, just adapting different strategies to different communities on what really works for that community is what that matters by the end of the day.
Okay, so then the men, they have to put their voice across, because if then men say that I don't have to marry a woman who's cut, then the women themselves will realize, okay, if that's not a qualification, then we don't have to do it. So that voice is important.
Yeah, that's important. There has been a conversation, and it's always interesting, where people ask, then who will marry the girls that have not been cut? That have already been cut. And true. The truth is, if men do not bring in the conversation that girls are marriable, or they can be married when they are not cut, then I will never stop this. So it is important for men to come out clearly and say, I am willing to marry a girl that is not cut, and she is whole the way she is. And just having that conversation, especially among people who have a voice in the community, people who can be heard and listened to, is really important.
So have you gone to the ground, to the communities, and what sort of conversation are you having with them?
So Kenya has 22 hotspot counties that practice FGM, ranging from the northeastern part, from Mandera to Tana River, down to Kuria in Migori County. All these counties have different aspects, and some of them would say they are practicing it because of religion. So, like the northeastern part would probably be religious talking, religious leaders speaking. So you would probably bring in, imam sheikhs, and they have a conversation that they understand that is actually not. It's a conversation that they should think about. What do the Quran say about it? Does it ask them to do it or not? And so over time, we've had those conversations, demystifying that from religion, for example. It's proven and clear that it's not a religious obligation. We have different communities that speak about, culture, is the cultural aspect. And, Council of Elders is where are the people who you bring about. They sit under the tree or just come and have a conversation in the rooms that you train, because these are the people who are going to be holding barazas in their communities. These are the people who are going to congregate others. These are the people who can stand and say, I am not going to cut my children because I don't think this is right. So looking at where we are now, men will continue playing a big role on the ground, on the media, as well as in their families, because it is difficult being a campaigner, speaking about these issues in your family. Imagine asking your mom, "Are you cut? And how was it?"
That sounds very difficult to even just approach.
Yeah, but it's easy for you to go speak out in other communities. But I think we should also have the courage of having these conversations within our families.
At home.
Start from there.
True.
Yeah.
And the government seeks to end FGM by 2022, which is next year.
Yeah.
Is that going to be achieved?
I don't know. I'm not sure. What I would say is, I think the president's remark and promise to end FGM by 2022 in the long run is something that might not happen. But I have seen lots of good results from that, because there have been more campaigns, there has been more funding, there has been more efforts coming together since he made that remark in Vancouver. So what I'm saying is, we still have a goal for 2030 by the UN, and looking at where the president set it at 22 at the end of his tenure is a little bit far-fetched in terms of vision.
Given the timeline.
Given the timeline right now, yeah. But I think it's important for us to think about it this way. Many countries lack political goodwill, and political goodwill is very important, because now you have, as campaigners, we are able to cite, first of all, the Act for 2011 for the prohibition of the practice of FGM, and also the president's remark.
Okay.
So if a chief says, I will not arrest this cutter who's been pinpointed, then I'm going to say, then you are clearly going against the president's directive, and you are in the office of the president at the grassroots. So I think going forward, we've seen lots of funding also going to the anti-FGM board, and they are now being able to move across the country, sensitizing the communities. And like last year, I know that there are chiefs that lost their jobs in Korea because they did not do their job when the gas were being cut. So I think going forward, and the declaration might not lead to ending of FGM in Kenya by 2022, but I think it has really accelerated the conversation.
Whole process.
Yeah.
You have been watching Bottom Line Kenya right here on Look Up TV, and the conversation today was the campaign against female genital mutilation. I am Nancy Nalima. Thank you for watching.
We value your feedback and welcome your complaints about our programming and operations. Feel free to get in touch with us through 0700 893 542 or send us an email to